little after time. Sound okay, everybody? Yep. Let's begin with a prayer. O Almighty and most merciful God, of thy bountiful goodness, keep us, we beseech thee, from all things that may hurt us, that we, being ready both in body and soul, may cheerfully accomplish those things that thou wouldest have done. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Welcome back to Learn Biblical Hebrew. Today we'll pick up where we left off. We didn't quite get all the way through chapter 7 last time, so we'll return. If you want a page number, if you're using the page in Dobson, it's page 84. And we had got through something like the first verse or two. So I'm going to call up, if I can find it, the text once more. Dobson has drawn, we're in Dobson chapter 7, section 11, page 84, and he's drawn this passage from the 11th chapter of Jeremiah's prophecy. So let's review where we had got to. Quite sure we did the first verse. Yeah, I think we did the first couple of verses, did we not? Haddavar asher haya el Yirmiyahu me'et Adonai lemor. The word which was, literally, to Jeremiah, or which came to Jeremiah, as most modern translations would make it, from, with the Lord saying. And we have an imperative of Shama, Shim'u et divrei habrit hazot. Here, and it's a plural here, addressed to a group of people, hear the words of this covenant. V'dibartam El Ish Yehudah, and speak them to the men of Judah, Va'al Yoshvei Yerushalayim, and to the inhabitants, the sitters, literally, of Jerusalem. Does anybody remember that we got any further than that? That's about what I remember us doing. So I guess we'll pick it up. So that's the first two verses. And what I have on the screen right now, for our convenience sake, I guess you have your textbook, but I'm using, for general purposes here, this website called, what is it called? There we are, Tanakh ML Organization. A web presentation of the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. So this is kind of the official and going text of the Old Testament right now, as published out of Stuttgart in Germany. So are we ready to continue? Take on some fresh Hebrew. Let's read verse 3. We can just proceed word by word for now. Va'amarta, everybody. Alehem. Ko amar. Adonai Elohei Yisrael.
Israel.
So that takes us up to the Atnach. That'll be a kind of complete statement making up the first major part of the verse. How do we translate v amarta? What we have here, if you look at the 5 letters of the word, is take off the vav at the beginning. That's just a grammatical feature. The ta on the end is the person and number, second person singular. So we're working with the verb amar. Remember the meaning of it? To say. Good. And looking at the conjugation, this is one of those suffix. Part of the suffix conjugation, we call it the perfect tense, traditionally. And then it has a vav on the front of it. So it's a perfect with a vav consecutive or a vav conversive, as they used to be called. So we're going to translate this, and you, singular, shall say. And you shall say, alehem.
To them.
To them. So the al comes from el. Then the hem makes it plural suffix. To them, ko amar Adonai.
Thus says the Lord.
Thus says the Lord, Elohei Yisrael, the God of Israel. So this apparently is what God wants Israel to hear. Arur, Ha'ish, Asher lo yishma, et divrei, habrit hazot. So I think we know all the words except maybe this first one, arur. So let me explain that. That comes from the verb arar, meaning to curse. Yeah. And the form of it is what we haven't, is another thing we haven't seen. We've begun to work a little bit with participles. We've seen that the usual pattern for making a participle would be to put an O in the first syllable, and that sere, orer, cursing, would be the translation of that. But there's also a passive participle, and that's what we're looking at here. You take the same 3 letters, and this time you can write the oo sound in that form, or you can write it out in the full form. That's what we have in our text. Arur, that means being cursed. Being cursed. In other words, when we move from the active voice into the passive voice, it means that the subject isn't doing it, but rather the subject is receiving the action. So the subject in this case isn't cursing anybody, but is rather being cursed, is the object of a curse. So a good translation for that would be cursed. Remember that a participle is basically an adjective formed from a verb stem. So cursed, like an adjectival description of somebody. Cursed is ha'ish. Let's translate together now.
The man.
Yep, cursed is the man who lo yishma.
Does not listen.
Okay, who does not listen and
to the words.
To the words of
This covenant.
Yep, of the covenant, this one meaning this covenant. And in a context like that, not listening often takes on the connotation not obeying. So you could even legitimately translate this: cursed is the man who does not obey the words of this covenant. What does Dobson do with it? With the Yishma?
Not the way you just did.
Yeah.
Okay.
He says
He
obey.
takes it to be an obey. Good for Dobson. Let's read on into verse 4 then. Asher CVT.
Asher. Asher.
CVT.
DVT.
Et
Et.
avotechem
Avotechem.
b'yom hotzii otam. Hotzii
CT.
otam
Otam.
me'eretz Mitzrayim
That's Mitzrayim.
So we have another asher here. It's either a who or a which. When we first met this today, it was in the expression, cursed is the man who. But now the last thing that's been mentioned is the words of this covenant, which. So we're probably going to go for a which rather than a who when we meet asher for the second time in these verses. CVT.
CVT.
Is that a word we've seen? I don't think it is it?
It's on the next page.
I don't remember it.
No, I don't think we've seen it. So Dobson probably gives you a marginal note or a note on the next page to explain
It's a
it.
verb, I mean, it's a word on the next page there. Top of the thing.
You might have heard, if you have Jewish friends, you might have heard them refer to the commandments using the noun form mitzvah. Have you heard of a mitzvah? Bar mitzvah, for example. When a Jewish boy is 12 years old, he goes through his bar mitzvah. It means son of commandment. In other words, he becomes a person who takes on the characteristics of commandment keeping. From that age and forward, he's held responsible for his keeping of Torah, has adult responsibilities, as it were, before God. Well, mitzvah is just a noun based on this triliteral stem, tzava, meaning to command. Put an M in front of it, it turns it into the noun commandment. So tzava is to command, and that's what we're looking at in the text in front of us. Happens to be in the PL stem. We haven't talked much yet about nifals and PLs and hifils, but as soon as you start reading real Hebrew text, all these kind of varied forms of the verb come into the field of view, and we have to cope with them. But all you need to know for now is that it means I commanded. CVT, you can recognize the first person singular ending there, T. So, which I commanded et avotechem. That we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, an av is a father. So, avot would be the plural, fathers. And here we have the pronominal ending, your fathers, added to it. So, which I commanded your fathers. We're not going to try to translate the et. We don't have anything like it in English. Just a sign of the direct object. Which I commanded your fathers, bayom.
On the day.
Okay, in the day. Now, here's another verb we haven't met, so let's explain it. Dictionary form, yatsa. This is a good one to latch on to early on because it's one of the most common verbs in the Hebrew Bible. It means, yes, in itself it means to go out, to make an exit. And what we're looking at in the text before us, you notice it has this hey, where is it? This hey in front of it, ho, ce. The yod has become this vav now, that's just a phonetic change. But the significant addition is the hey, which puts it into the hiphil stem. So if yatsa means to go out, put an H in front of it, and that adds the causative idea, make somebody to go out, cause somebody to go out. We're going to see this again and again. There are lots of verbs, not every one, but huge number of verbs that you can add that hey to at the front, and we call that stem change the hiphil stem, and it's usually regarded as kind of causative. Dobson doesn't bother to explain all that, and probably it's a good thing because he doesn't want to overload us, and I probably shouldn't be doing it either. But I just assume people are probably a little bit curious about why the form is different from what we've seen. So he translates it to lead out, to bring out, to cause to go out. So those are certainly legitimate translations. What we're looking at here is actually an infinitive form, though. So in the expression, in the day of my leading out them. This is like the et earlier, but now it has the pronominal ending on it, otam, making it them. So let's go back to the beginning of the verse, which I commanded your fathers in the day of my to lead them out, me'eretz Mitzrayim,
of the land
from the land
of Egypt,
of Egypt. And then a parallel expression, let's read it in Hebrew, mikur habarzel lemor.
from the oven of iron.
Good, from the furnace, from the oven, the one of iron, barzel, saying, Shim'u v'koli. So there we have an expression. Let's translate those two words. Shim'u, same form we had up here and at the beginning of verse 2.
Listen.
So listen or hear. And with the u on the end of it, it's addressed to a group of people. God is speaking to all of Israel. You lot, listen v'koli. If we had the word kol,
Voice.
when it's spelled with a kuf rather than a kaf, it means voice. So listen to my voice. Listen to voice of me. Yeah? Va asitem otam kachol asher atzav ve etchem. So a second command is added to the first. First one is very basic and general. Hear or listen to my voice, and asitem.
Yeah.
Right? It's from the verb asa. So it would be spelled. Let me get a fresh page up. It would be spelled with an ayin and a sin and a hey at the end. That would be the dictionary form asa, to do. And then the tam on the end, addressed to a group of people. And you shall do, otam, That's another form of et, just to make it plural. So you shall do
Them.
them, good. You shall perform them kachol.
All?
So here we have the last two letters. The chol would be the word all, and then the k in front of it. I don't know whether we've seen this, maybe we haven't. As, or it's kind of like a key, a shortened form of key. Here, let's translate it according to all which a tzaveh. Now here we can recognize again tzaveh, right?
Command.
Command.
That's the word for commanding, and then with the aleph in front, that makes it first person singular. So God is the speaker. According to all which I
have
commanded etchem you.
you.
V'hiyitem,
Ten.
yep, v'hiyitem
Ten.
li
Me.
la'am v'anochi ehyeh lachem le'elohim. I think that's as far as we need to go. We're just doing the first 5 verses. So once we've done this lot, we will have read that exercise. So you can probably recognize this. There's a v, a vav, and then a form of haya. This one has the plural ending tem added to it. V'hiyitem.
It was to them.
Okay? And then with the vav in front of it, that's kind of going to reverse the tense. So let's translate it as, and you shall be. You lot shall be li,
To me.
to me or for me, la'am,
People.
for a people. And Hebrew sometimes throws in this lamed in front of the word am. You'll see this once in a while to indicate this is the predicate. You shall be to me for a people, meaning you shall be my people. Va'anochi,
Anaki.
I shall be.
good. Va'anochi ehyeh, and I will be lachem, to you.
You.
And here's this lamed indicating the predicate again, and then the word Elohim.
God.
Yeah, I shall be for you God. Literally, I shall be to you for a God. Any questions then? Kind of exciting to be reading 4 verses straight off of actual Hebrew. Let's go back, because having worked out the meaning as we go and sort of pausing on details, we can sort of lose the forest for the trees. But let me just read it for you again. Just listen this time and see how much of the meaning can come across having worked it out once. I'll read it slowly, but I will just kind of move along. Hadavar asher haya el Yirmiyahu me'et Adonai le'emor. Did you get it? Did you catch what that was saying? It's always a good exercise, I think. You know, having gone through it slowly and worked out, done the analysis, then you put it back together at the end and see if you can catch the sense of what's being said. Hadavar asher haya el Yirmiyahu me'et Adonai le'emor shim'u et divrei habrit hazot v'dibartam אל איש יהודה ועל יושבי ירושלים. ואמרת עליהם, כה אמר אדוני אלוהי ישראל, ארור האיש אשר לא ישמע את דברי הברית הזאת, אשר ציוויתי את אבותיכם ביום הוציאי אותם מארץ מצרים, מכור הברזל, לאמור שמעו בקולי ועשיתם אותם ככל אשר אצווה אתכם, והייתם לי לעם, ואנוכי אהיה לכם לאלוהים. Suddenly, we've jumped for some reason. I don't know quite what happened there. We lost our Jeremiah passage. Where am I? Jeremiah, and we want 11. That's where we were. I must have touched something. Well,
Dr. Rainbow, remind me what year it was you started learning Hebrew, just
when
as a small word of encouragement.
when did I begin? 1974.
That makes me feel, well, actually, no, I pretty much feel the same. But thank you.
I started in the autumn of 1974. That was my second year at university. And I only took, I think, a year's worth while I was in undergrad. And then when I got into seminary, of course, I had to take Hebrew. It was a requirement at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. And I took a few elective courses beyond just the basic sequence. So that was my introduction to biblical Hebrew. And then I had teaching positions and did doctoral work in New Testament. And I didn't really make as much use of my Hebrew as I should have, so it became rusty until, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I decided, here I am, I do know this language, I ought to be making use of it, so I set myself to read through the Hebrew Old Testament, which I just completed this last summer. So I haven't been using it continuously ever since 1974, no. It is a bit here and a bit there, and then a long period of disuse, and then sudden enthusiasm to get it back. Yeah. No, it takes a little while, and we're still at a very early stage here. You've only been working with this for a few weeks. So you have to expect a lot of it still to be a little bit dark, but
Yeah, that's probably a good word.
but hopefully it will become brighter as we go. Well, let's go over to page 86. There are a couple of things to notice on page 86. Here's a nice long table for us. Dobson seizes this opportunity to introduce a few verbs we haven't worked with yet, but he's also, the main point of it is to teach us the imperative form. We're going to call it the Kal imperative. I usually abbreviate imperative as an IMV to distinguish it from the imperfect, which is I use IMPF for that. So here we're focusing on the Kal imperative, a form of the verb used to issue either a command or at least to try to summon the hearer into some kind of action. Imperatives are not always used in authoritative, commanding kinds of situations. They can be used in exactly the opposite. If you come to God in prayer with an entreaty, you use an imperative when you're trying to rouse God to action, as it were. So here, let's read the verbs as we go down the column on the left. Shamar.
Shema.
Now, what's he doing in his columns? He tells us the verb means keep, which is helpful. Yes, these are all imperative forms. So shmor. To make these verbs imperative, instead of having a shamar as the vowel pattern, we're going to go to a schwa in the first syllable and an o vowel in the second syllable. Shmor. Becomes basically a one-syllable word, therefore. Amad is the next one. The imperative form is amod. Then you can see that's the second person masculine imperative. That's the one you probably want to pay attention to because the other forms are dependent on it. So feminine, shimri, shimru, and shamor na. You're not going to see the feminine forms very often. The masculine forms, just because it was a patriarchal culture and many of the actors in the Bible are men, you're going to see the masculine forms far more frequently. So as long as you know shmor and shimru, you can probably work out from context, if you happen to see a shimri or a shamorna, that they will be addressed to women. With amad, that's a word that means to stand. Extremely common, has a wide range of use. The pillar of cloud that accompanied the Israelites is called an amud, based on the same triliteral stem, a standing thing, something standing up, a pillar. Yashav is the third one down.
Yasha.
Yasha.
Now in that case, that's a verb that starts with a yod. That's called a weak verb. It loses the yod in the imperative form shev. We've seen this already with halach. That's coming up in the list. But the yods do it too. Sometimes you just lose a letter in making the imperative. Shachav,
Shekha.
to lie down or to lie prone. Shachav is the imperative. Kum, very useful word. To get up or to rise. Kum. And the imperative is simply kum, just like the dictionary form. Achal.
Achal.
I think we've seen achal, haven't we? To eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imperative form echol.
Chol.
And now we learn drinking alongside of eating. Shata. So achal v'shata, to eat and to drink. Shtei
Stay.
is the imperative form. Halach. See, verbs that start with a yod or that start with the letter hey, they make up a whole group of verbs that we call weak because they don't necessarily follow the full kind of ideal pattern. Verbs like shamar or like katal don't have these weak letters in them, but the yod or the hey, they drop off, so the imperative in this case just becomes lech. You don't keep the hey in the imperative. Shuv,
Shuv.
one of the very important words theologically because it's based, the word repent is based on this one. When the prophets call Israel to repent, they use shuv, to turn or to return. To turn back is kind of the idea here. So it's a little different in Hebrew. In Greek, the word for repent is meta noeo, to change the mind, whereas in Hebrew, literally to turn back, to change one's steps, been going away, now you turn back and come home. shuv, and the imperative form is also shuv. So you may have noticed, going back up to get up, kum remained kum in the imperative, shuv now remains shuv. That's another of the weak vowels, a three-letter stem that has that shurek, that oo sound in the middle. They tend not to change when they make imperatives. These are just slight irregularities, slight diversions from the main pattern. And then the verb katav, to write, katov being the imperative, and kara, to call out. So when someone is reading aloud, they use kara to indicate that the person is calling out the words that they see on the page. Okay, bottom of the page, a proverb, Proverbs 3:7. Let's read it together. Al tihi chacham
Al tehi chacham
ba'einecha.
be'eineka.
So the al is the form. It's not low. That's one negative. Not. But when you're telling someone not to do something, you turn the letters around. Al. So it's a way of saying do not, and then the tehi. See, this is one of those weak vowels, haya. So the tav there is the second person singular, and then the he is from the verb haya. If it were complete, it would have another hey, but it loses that hey in this form. So al tehi, do not be. Chacham, we've seen, wise. And then a new noun for us, ayin, means in the eye, the physical eye, ayin. In a few places it can also mean a well. I don't know whether the eye and the well were thought to have some kind of a similarity with each other. They're both round, I guess. But anyway, eye is the most common translation of ayin, and here you have the plural form of it. Be'einecha, do not be wise in your eyes. Yara et Adonai, everybody.
Yara et Adonai.
Vesur me'ra.
Vesur me'ra.
So yara, that's a verb for fearing, here in the imperative form. Fear et Yahweh, et Adonai. Fear the Lord. And then that three-letter word sur means to turn away. And turn away me'ra, from evil. Just a little bit of fun for us to read. Otherwise, I leave you to do the word searches on your own. Just a matter of finding all these little words in the table. Clever the way Dobson can find so many words. To put in one place by going up, by going down, by going forward and backward, and a few diagonals as well. But they're all in there. I don't think Dobson really means to introduce all these vocabulary items in a serious sort of way. He just kind of wants us to be exposed, to the letters and the sounds of the language. So, if there are any questions on Chapter 7, we can take them up now. Remember, Chapter 7 was all about nouns, how they can be found in either the absolute state or the construct state, and in the construct state we can add personal endings to them. So I think that concept comes through pretty loud and clear in that chapter. Let's move on then into lesson 8. Here we're going to be working with what we've been calling the imperfect and the perfect forms of verbs. So the chapter title up there, we have two Hebrew words, yishlach and v'lakach. Yishlach, that's the prefix conjugation or the imperfect form. V'lakach, that's the suffix conjugation or the perfect form. I believe both of these verbs are new, so let's learn them. Going through table 8.1. Let's read downwards. Shalach, everybody.
Shalach.
So you can translate that, he sent, that is what the actual form indicates, or you can just say to send. Halach,
Halach.
so that word actually means to walk. It can also mean to go along. Allah,
Allah.
there's a new one, to go up. We've seen the preposition al, meaning on. So that's kind of the idea of upness, and it can be used as a verb as well. Allah, go up. Yarad. So
Yarad.
be careful reading that. You notice the middle letter is a resh. The last letter on the left is a dalet. Yarad. They look very similar, those two second letters, but to go down. So Allah and Yarad, if you learn them both side by side, to go up or to go down, helps to remember them, to learn words in groups. Yatsa,
Yatsa.
to go out. Radaf, to follow after in hot pursuit. Shav, so that's a form of shuv, which we just saw, having to do with turning or returning or turning back. Ba, to go in. So actually, Dobson hasn't so arranged the table, but he could have arranged it with yatsa and bo, spelled like this, side by side, to go out, to go in. Yatsa and bo. He's giving us the third person kal form, he came, which looks just a little different. Kara, he called, or to call, or to summon. Kara le would mean to call to someone. So to invite someone or to summon somebody, or to name somebody, to give somebody a name. You can use kara in lots of connections. Yada, the verb for knowing, he knew. Now let's go over to the far right column because there are a few more verbs over there. He's doing something different in the middle column. Lakach, to take. Yashav, we've seen that one, haven't we? To sit or to dwell. Asa, to do or to make. Then a few nouns. Bayit, basically means a house, but it can refer to a family as well. Eved is a servant. There's also, for your information, a verb, avad, that means to perform labor or to do work. Et, sign of the direct object. We've seen that often, and now finally, although Dobson has slipped in a number of these terms for us already, now he introduces them formally. Oto, so that can be the direct object. God made him, oto. God made OT,
OT.
T.
Me, God made etchem,
Then.
you plural, masculine. God made otam,
Tom.
them. Now, one of the key concepts in this chapter will be the prepositions. And if you've forgotten your high school grammar, we can make it easy by saying that a preposition is a word that stands in the preposition. It's usually a little word and it comes before a more important word. And it usually lays out some kind of a spatial relationship. So the examples here are found. Look at the table or the drawing he gives us at the bottom of the page. Start over on the far right side where it looks like a house with a roof. And there's an al on top and a tachat underneath. So al means on and tachat means under. Let's pronounce those words al
All.
and tachat
Tachat.
under. And then moving to the left, you can go to the house or to the box using either a L or an L. Those prepositions are equivalent. So to or toward. And then once you're in the box, see that letter bait right in the middle there, B. There's an al on top again, and he's given us a lifnei in front. We've seen the noun panim, meaning a face. So lifnei would mean to the face or in front of. And then as motion proceeds through the house and out, min becomes the preposition. So going to the list up above in the middle column, let's read these prepositions. L,
The.
towards or to. L
L.
L.
would be synonymous. Al,
All.
All.
spelled with an in. On can also mean against. B,
The.
in is the basic translation. Lifnei,
Lifnei.
so in front of or before. Then here's a new one. Acharei,
Array.
after or behind. Min
Min.
literally means out of or from. Sham,
Sham.
there's a little different adverb. Grammarians consider prepositions to be adverbial. They usually describe a verbal action. He was walking to town, or he was sitting on the house. So on the house describes the sitting. It's therefore like an adverb. So it makes logical sense to throw in these adverbs of place as well. Misham,
Sham.
from there, and shamma.
Shama.
We call that a directive hey added at the end of sham, meaning to there or to that place. There's our new vocab to work with. Top of the next page, without any terminology or explanation, Dobson throws at us the concept of the infinitive. So I'm going to give you the term just so that you have heard it and are familiar with it. If you remember from your high school grammar, if you were fortunate enough to have grammar in high school, I didn't even get much. I had one teacher who taught us a little bit of grammar. I'm not sure they even teach it anymore. But what is an infinitive? Well, if we want to say, I wash, or you wash, or he washes, etc., all of these forms of the verb, sorry, I got an S in there where I didn't mean one. all these personal forms of the verb are regarded as kind of limiting it. You know, the undefined idea of washing becomes defined as soon as you specify who's doing it, either I or you, or he or she or they. The infinitive then would be just that basic form, indefinite or infinite, not made finite, usually translated in English using the preposition to. So to say to wash, that could be anybody doing it. It's undefined. There's no person or number connected with it. So Hebrew has infinitives, and usually they involve keeping all three letters, but as you're getting used to expecting by now, there will be a change in the pattern of the vowels. So, looking at the examples he gives us, drawn from Isaiah 37:28, let's read the Hebrew, V'shivtecha,
Shivtecha.
V'tzeitecha.
Say,
So the first one comes from the verb yashav. In this case, it's lost the yod, and all that's left are the last two letters, shiv. Likewise, yatsa has lost its yod, and all you see is the tzadi and the aleph. Literally, and you to sit, and you to go out. Uvo'acha yadati. So that last verb is the only one of all four of them that's a normal finite verb. Yadati, I knew. All the others are in the infinitive form. Now that doesn't mean that we always will translate them using a TO when we see them. Sometimes there will be a more elegant way to get around this, but it's just a form of the verb that names the verbal action without specifying who's doing it. That's all the infinitive is. Comes in useful in places like this. Notice how we can say, let me think of a good example sentence. I like to eat. Or we can say to eat is fun. So, in the sentence, I like to eat, what's the subject? Subject is I.
I.
And then the verb. So what is to eat doing? I like to eat. In effect, that's the direct object. It's just that usually the direct object would be a noun, and now we're taking a verbal idea and using that as a direct object. In the other case, what's our subject? To eat is fun.
Eat.
We have a subject here, to eat. Then we have a linking verb. Then here's our predicate. So, what we're saying in effect is that the infinitive can be used either as a subject or as an object. In other words, the infinitive takes a verb stem and puts it in a form where you can do with it the kinds of things that you normally would do with nouns. Just makes your language a little bit more flexible and positive. So it's a verb stem used as a noun in the same way that a participle is a verb stem used as an adjective. The infinitive and the participle open up some possibilities for us. I don't recall whether we need to use infinitives in the exercise at 8.2, but let's proceed to that. So I'm going to take my handy little card which I'm using as a bookmark, and cover the right column, and we'll proceed to read and translate. Bayom hahu
Bayom Hahu
halach David min habayit
Halach David min Habayit.
So let's translate that without consulting the English.
On the day.
Okay, good. On the day, and then the hahu would be that one.
That.
On that day, I'm going to keep
David went.
good. David walked or went min habayit
From the house.
from the house. Good. Vayikra la'avdo
Vayikra Le'avdo.
So here we get a little work with our new verbs. Yikra from kara,
Called.
and he called.
Called to
Here's our new word evid.
servant.
Right, he called to his servant.
David.
Vayetze ha'evid
Vayese Ha'avid
vayavo el David
Vayavo El David
lifnei veto.
Ne Vito.
Yeah, veto I should have read. I had my index finger on the vowel point, unfortunately. Okay, and we translate.
The servant went out.
Okay, and the servant went out and
Came
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 David
to David
David
in front of his house.
in front of his house. Good. Vayedaber elav hamelech vayomer. So that hangs together enough to translate.
Said
Said
to the king.
Yeah, our subject is going to be
to the king.
our subject is going to be the king Hamelech.
The king spoke to him.
So and the king spoke
And
to him
said,
and said, Lech liricho vayered shama vayeshev sham. So the king said to him, Lech, go
To Jericho.
to Jericho, and
down there.
he went down there,
And
They
stayed there.
so literally he sat there.
Okay.
Probably means something like he stayed there or he took up residence there, depending on the context more widely. Vayishlach David
David
el avdo
Abdo
vayedaber lo.
Ayidabel
Let's translate that. Our subject is David. David
went or sent
Here's our new word to send. Right. So David sent,
his servant.
and there's an L in front there. So David sent to his servant
and
and said
spoke
Not
and said to him,
to him,
Shuv misham.
return from there.
Okay. Return. Come back
there,
from there. Leveti hayom.
Leveti Hayom. Here too.
So the leveti would be the preposition l, followed by our noun bayit.
Oh,
Oh, to house.
Right. To my house.
today.
Then hayom would be today. The day means today.
Hayom.
And he said to him, come back from there to my house today. So David has now changed his mind. Vaya'al misham,
Hayom.
Vayal Misham.
Sham.
vayavo beveit David.
Vayalo.
David.
David.
So that ya'al, this is one of those weak verbs. In the dictionary, it's the form Allah, but when it gets the yod on front with the vav as well, it loses the final hey. So, and he went up
Up from there
from there.
and return.
Okay, here not shuv, but bo, to go in is the basic meaning here. And he went up from there and came in
To the house of David.
to the house of David. Yagut, going pretty smoothly. Couple lines still in this little story. Has the story piqued your interest, is the question. Well, it's better than just doing lists of words anyway. Lifnei hamelech,
Lifnei Hamelech.
vayomer elav.
Vayomer Elav.
So I guess this really is a continuation from that line above. And he went up from there and came in the house of David, Lifnei Hamelech.
Front of this.
Okay, in front of or before the king.
From the king.
And he
Said,
said
Said
to him, Asiti et kol mitzvotecha.
City at
Kol
Mitzvotecha.
you made.
So from asa, yes, it's from the verb to make or to do. Notice the ending there, T, so who's doing it? I. So let's say, I have done,
That's cool.
all commanded.
okay, I have done all mitzvotecha. Here now, this is the noun form, mitzvah, commandment.
Your command.
I have done all your command. Commands. Questions on that story? This is mainly just giving a little bit of work with this new vocabulary, and that's a good way to learn it, I think, is to see it in a story. Okay, let's see how the next story goes. I'm not sure whether this first line, I guess it's just the title, but let's read it anyway. Shalach Avraham
Avraham.
et Avdo
Et Avdo.
Mitzrayma.
Right.
So our subject is Avraham. Abraham,
And
Shalach, sent, et Avdo, from Eved, that's right, sent his servant, and then the word Mitzrayim has that directive hey on the end of it. Mitzrayimah, meaning to Egypt. Okay? Vayikra Avraham
Avraham.
la'avdo hagadol
Ba'avdo Haggadol. Haggadol.
Asher al Beito
Asher al Beito.
Vayishlach Oto
Vayishlach Oto.
Mitzrayimah.
Mitzrayimah.
And I think that really, I've actually put a mark in my text to indicate that seems to be the end of an idea. So let's translate it. And Abraham did what? Yikra, from kara. Good, to call. So, and Abraham called
To
right? Called to his Eved,
servants.
called to his servant. And it's not just any servant, but it's La'avdo Haggadol. I don't know if we've seen Gadol, have we?
Great.
Great.
Yeah. Large, great. And then a little bit more information on this great servant, his chief servant maybe, who al beito,
House.
so there's the word for house, the al in front of it, preposition meaning above or on, or here let's say over. So he's the chief servant who was over his house. Now we're back to Abraham doing something. Vayishlach oto Mitzrayimah.
He sent
And he sent him
him to
Egypt. There it is.
And to Egypt.
Very good. Vayikach ha'eved
Vayikach ha'eved.
asara gamalim. Now we haven't met the word gamal, but it's basically cognate with the English word camel. Gamal, camel. And I don't think we've seen the number either, have we? Asara or eser in the masculine form.
And
The number 10, maybe we have seen it. So, and the servant Yitkach, that's our new verb lakach.
call. Take.
Right, to take, lakach. You notice in the middle there, we're looking at a form that has a doubled, has a dot in the middle of the kaf. Yikkach. That's short for yilkach. The lamed has kind of got gobbled up and represented instead as a dot in the middle of that letter. That happens with this verb. You'll find, as we go forward in Hebrew, there is a so-called regular verb chart. The chart that shows you all the forms of a regular verb. The problem is, all the really common verbs in the language are not regular verbs. They all have some kind of irregularity like this. So you just kind of have to roll with it and get used to seeing these irregular forms. And the servant took asara gamalim, took 10 camels, miggamale adonav,
Lay.
good, pronounce it in Hebrew first, miggamale adonav, literally then from the camels of his Lord, vayikach kesef,
Vayikach
Kesef.
Kesef.
Beyado.
Yado.
Vayelech Mitzrayma.
Vayelech Mitzrayim.
So Yikach, here we meet it again,
He took
and he took
silver
silver or money
from his hand.
in his hand, good,
He went to Egypt.
and he went to Egypt.
And
Vayirdefu Acharav Anashim Ra'im. Let's translate those 4 words. Our subject will be the Anashim Ra'im. I think we know both words. Anashim would be the plural of Ish,
Men.
so men, and they have the quality of being Ra,
Bad.
bad. So evil men
man
Evil men.
pursued him.
from Radaf, good. Vayirdefu, from Radaf, to pursue. Evil men pursued Acharav, after him.
How about after?
Vayavohu Shama,
Vayavo. Shama.
Vayikahu,
Vayikach.
et kol hakesef, vayashuvu misham, vayeshvu viricho. So we have 3 lines we're doing. Vayavohu, and they did what? They came. So that's our little.
There.
And they came there, or they came to there. That is where Abraham's servant was. Vayikahu, and they took all the money or all the silver.
And return.
Now we're looking at the verb shuv, to return, and they turn back
From there.
from there. And now we have the verb yashav,
And he returned.
and they stayed, or literally they sat, Viricho, in Jericho. So, bunch of bandits on the road. Yeah, we're going to see one of the hardest.
They're so similar, the return and the stay.
Right, there's a verb yashav, and there's a verb shuv. And some of the forms are very similar, because the problem with yashav being one of these weak verbs is it often loses its yod, and so you're left with the sheen and the vav, with maybe other stuff before it or after it, and you just wonder which verb am I looking at? Is it from yashav or is it from shuv? Does it have to do with sitting, or does it have to do with returning? And it takes forever seeing all the different forms to begin to learn to distinguish them. So I usually just rely on context. I haven't tried to memorize all the forms of these verbs. And you just roll with the one that seems to make better sense, as long as you know that there are these 2 that have some overlapping forms. Well, very good. We could trudge on, but I think we've used up a good amount of our time for today. So go ahead for next time and read. There's a fair amount of reading and explanation in this chapter having to do with the difference in how do we translate a perfect versus an imperfect form. I've also put some stuff, couple of helpful things on Pathwright for you. both written by, I think, Israeli people, Israeli women who are teachers of Hebrew, that show, how you translate these imperfect and perfect forms isn't actually as cut and dry as we all would like it to be. There's actually a fair amount of controversy, even among the experts, about what the actual distinction is between the Hebrew suffix and the Hebrew prefix conjugation in terms of their meaning. But we can talk about that more next time. So just enjoy reading the chapter and working ahead. We'll probably press toward the end of chapter 8 if we can get there. Gives us a chance actually to read from Genesis chapter 24. For the first time we have to crack open our Hebrew Bible because Dobson doesn't lay the passage out for us on the page. He'll give us some helpful notes to it, but you'll have to use your Hebrew Bible or else something online if you prefer to access the passage itself, Genesis 24, the first 10 verses. But that's coming toward the end of chapter 8, something to look forward to. So we'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you.